Responses, the member from Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it gives me great honour to rise on behalf of Andrea Horwath and the New Democrats on Sexual Assault Prevention Month. I have the figures from the United States. 700,000 women a year in the United States are raped. In Canada, we can extrapolate. I couldn't find the figures for all of Canada. Let's assume 70,000, since we're about the 10th the size. You heard the member from Kitchener-Waterloo talk about 7,000 in Ontario alone. These are horrendous numbers. This is a war on women. Let us make no mistake about it. Certainly, we in the New Democrats thought that one of the first responses from the province of Ontario should be nonpartisan, should be an all-party standing committee of women dealing with domestic violence. And so we put forward a motion years ago. It sits on the order paper still, gathering dust. Nothing has been done by this government about that. Let me talk about what hasn't been done, because I'm tired of the platitudes, Mr. Speaker. I'm tired of standing up here every year and listening to us talking about the issue when we know we're not doing enough about it. And one of the things we're not doing enough about it, and kudos to the family services, is we're not funding family services enough. We're not giving money to the frontline service providers that we should be doing. Let me give you an example of that. It's just around the corner, Mr. Speaker, down on College. It's called Victim Services. They're a victim crisis response team. I would wager, if not the largest in Ontario, certainly one of the largest groups of volunteers plus staff members that go out 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, deal with 20,000 victims a year along with the police. And guess what? In 1990, they were funded $286 per victim. You know what their funding is from 2010? $31. That's how far it's gone down, from $286 per victim in 1990, $31 today. That is shameful. It's unacceptable. Every year they have been here before this government talking about the flat line in their funding every single year with no response. They deal with 35 different languages. They deal with 150 volunteers. I know their story because I've been working with them ever since I was elected. I imagine their story is not alone. I imagine that their story is replicated in family services of various sorts across Ontario. This is unacceptable. So every year I will stand up yet again and say this yet again until funding is actually provided to frontline service providers for victims of sexual assault and violence. Until the number goes from 31 up a bit, I'll be here, or the ghost of me will be here, saying it again. On a happy note, on a good note, I want to leave on a positive note. There is one initiative that we've managed to get together on in this House. It's called Ruth's Daughters of Canada. We had faith leaders from across the faith spectrum come to Queen's Park, sign on a document that said they were committed to eradicating domestic violence. Every faith just about was represented here, and the member from Etobicoke Centre and the member from Whitby, Oshawa also signed on behalf of their parties. So Ruth's Daughters of Canada last Mother's Day was launched in this place, and chapters are beginning in places of faith and worship across Ontario as we speak. So that happened. And, Mr. Speaker, I'll say, if that can happen, why can't we have a standing committee that deals with this issue? If that can happen, why can't we have funding, a funding that really provides our frontline service workers with the tools they need to deal with this most intractable of problems? Remember, it's not just in the past. This is also about our daughters and our granddaughters, as well as our mothers and our grandmothers. May it not continue for another generation. May we finally overcome our partisan differences in this place, actually get together and do something. Thank you.
It's now time for petitions. Member from Durham.
I'm being moved aside. Anyway, petitions to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Whereas Dalton McGuinty and the Liberal government of Ontario has continued to ignore farmers and has slashed support to farmers by over $145 million in 2010 alone. Unbelievable. Whereas agriculture makes an important contribution to the Ontario economy and deserves investment and respect. Whereas over 25 million pounds of fresh produce is disposed of or plowed back into Ontario's fields each year, while food banks across Ontario continue to struggle to feed those in need. And whereas PC MPP Bob Bailey, well, he's here today, has introduced a significant tax credit for farmers who donate agricultural food to food banks to help provide tax relief to farmers and to assist local food banks. And whereas if the